So we're going to take a look at Muslims in U.S. and right home in New York City. First slide up here. By the numbers, in 2015, there are some 3.3 million Muslims who are living in the United States. They constitute about 1% of the entire population of the nation. By 2050, some projections say that American Muslim population will reach about 8.1 million, or 2.1% of the total population. Looking at the projections into those projections, it suggests that U.S. Muslims population will grow faster than that of Jewish Americans and the Hindus who are coming in the decades. Muslims are also projected to be the second largest religious group, right behind Christians. If we look a little bit more into those numbers of political representation, at this very moment, there are 0 Muslim U.S. senators. In the House of Representatives, there are 2. Democrats Andre Carson of Indiana and Keith Ellison of Minnesota are the 2. Looking at another place that's decidedly different than our Congress, in Hamtramck, Michigan, it's the only American city with a majority Muslim city council there in place. So that is in New York City here, there are between 400,000 and 800,000 people in the metro area who say that their religion is Islam. Former City Council member Robert Jackson was the only Muslim serving on in the New York City Council from his term of 2001 to 2013. But in 2013, Sheila Abdus-Salam served as the first Muslim on the Court of Appeals, which of course is the state's highest judicial body. She was a twofer actually as the first black woman, and she happens to be a Muslim as well. In 2015, Carolyn Walker Diallo was elected as a civil court judge right here in Brooklyn's 7th Municipal District. So that's a little bit into representation, and that's some of the numbers on Muslims in the U.S. and right here in New York City. Now let's get into the A block.
New York City prides itself on diversity of all sorts, yet as we just heard, no council, assembly, or Senate member identifies as Muslim. To discuss the barriers in place and the strategies that could overcome them, we want to welcome Mirna Haidar, lead organizer and advocacy trainer at the Arab American Association of New York. Welcome, Mirna.
Thank you.
Well, and Mohammad Khan, the campaign manager for Empower Change. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. So guys, as we just heard, maybe on the national level it makes a little more sense because we're just 1% of the population. But in cities like New York, why are there no elected officials? I mean, besides the judges that we just learned about, why do you think that's going on in a city here like New York?
I mean, for me personally, when I think about it and the people I work with in Bay Ridge, there are so many barriers for people to even survive and just go about their day-to-day lives. And so for us to even get there, we have to overcome so many barriers and systematic oppressions that the New York City government is implementing on us. For example, we have surveillance, for example, policies that are our communities facing and waking up to and sleeping on. We have discriminatory policies that discriminate against our communities every day. So for me, it's that we have a systematic problem that we need to get over to even get there.
So Mohammad, explain what your organization does and how you're helping us get over those barriers.
Sure. So Empower Change is a national grassroots organization rooted in Muslim communities, organizing those communities and allies to fight for justice for all people. So we do some civic engagement work, and I would just echo what Mirna said. There are a lot of barriers to entry for Muslim communities, specifically in New York, but also, in general, it's difficult to vote in New York and to participate in democracy, right? We saw what happened in the presidential primary just a few weeks ago, where there were so many people who went to the poll sites and realized that they weren't able to vote. And then it's also really hard to run for office in New York, right? Especially New York State. You have things like, private financing of campaigns, where the only folks who are able to run for office are those who have access to institutions and money. And other resources that aren't really available for communities like ours.
So on the other side of that, it's one thing to run for office yourself, but it's another when you have front runners in the race who would disparage your community, or others who wouldn't even openly seek the support of the said communities, unless maybe Bernie Sanders goes to specific parts of Michigan and says, hey, you guys are a force and we need your numbers here. So how does that go down in just voting in Muslim communities?
Do you want to?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think if folks see that they're not being talked about except for in this frame of like security, right? Whether they're, you know, when it comes to issues of like terrorism, extremism, that's like such a disincentive to participate in the system at all. So if you see that you're only being talked about in this one way that's primarily negative, then like why would I participate? Why would I vote? Why would I get involved in this when, you know, the only way I can be involved is in a negative way.
And not that all Muslim communities are Arab, but I'm Arab myself, and the community that I serve is majority Arab Muslims, majority from Yemen. And a problem, for example, to register to vote, we do not have the forms in one of the formal official languages of New York, which is Arabic. And the government has been pushing back on us getting this simple, very simple form in Arabic. So that's another burden for our communities. So if they wanted to participate and they don't have access to English language, they do not have it like we have it in, I think we have it in Chinese and Spanish, but we do not have it in
Russian
Arabic.
as well.
Even though you saw we have 400,000 to 800,000 Muslims, which among those will have a lot of Arab people who need that form in Arabic.
And that's not something we need an act of Congress to do. That's something that the people who are our neighbors can make happen in the city council.
That is truly unbelievable. But Mirna, that makes me think about what you were saying about just kind of the regular day-to-day things that the community is facing. Can you speak to me about some more of those kind of blocks just in day-to-day life that you feel like then just extend to this political world?
I mean, so when the political world is given this platform on the media, right, so everyone is hearing about it, it replicates into the community. So from our bus drivers in Bay Ridge, they are constantly kicking out our people just because of their hijab or the way they appear. And recently we actually filed a complaint with the MTA because of this particular bus line that's been kicking out members of our community off the bus.
Just for wearing hijab?
Yes, or not speaking the language, or, you know, struggling to put the coins together. So we've been having that as a problem in our community. We also recently heard about the male person who attacked a Muslim woman also in Brooklyn. So this is what we live with. And our women that we serve in the community at the Arab American Association of New York, they're constantly fearing for their lives on the streets. They're constantly feeling threatened. We had a woman in my program, the Arab Women Activists and Leaders, being followed on the street of Bay Ridge and called names and terrorist, etc., until she got to our class. So she is coming to learn English at our association, and she had to go through this and fear for her kids in school.
So looking at this landscape, how do you effectively build coalitions with people who are in power, who are politicians, who are supposed to represent everyone? Like, what is the strategy? What do you bring to the table? How do you impact those leaders?
I think it starts with building power and organizing within our own communities and building coalitions and alliances with other marginalized communities and building power there. So that way when we are in the room with people, policymakers, politicians, other folks who have the power, they're not looking at us as this marginalized group that they can continue to push around and continue to marginalize, but they're looking at us as, you know, as whole people, as people with power who can, you know, push policymakers and change institutions.
And for us at the Arab American Association of New York, we serve as a bridge between the politicians or the policy work and the people who are disenfranchised or immigrants. And how do we do this? We partner with, for example, New York Immigration Coalition, and we push for example, this voting registration form in Arabic. That's one example. And how do we do that? By representing our people and being that bridge in between these two constituencies.
And do you feel like you're being heard?
So I told you, we have been getting pushback on this particular form, which we don't understand why. So we have to keep trying and hopefully getting things. We got things like, for example, the holiday, Muslim holiday. That's a really good progress, but we have a long way to go as New York City.
So this seems like the perfect thing to sort of rally around. It's a very clear goal with the beginning, a middle, and an end, because last week we spoke to members of the Mexican community, and they spoke about how their numbers are there, but they're so stretched out. There's not like one sort of epicenter. So I wondered if that was an issue in terms of the Muslim community, just knowing that all of the different nations that people come from. Like, we visited a mosque that had people represented from 62 different countries in one congregation. So how much is that a problem with people being spread out?
I wouldn't say it's as much of a problem, but it's also, you know, an opportunity. And I think by embracing that diversity, we can push on a number of issues. So I think another thing that happens when you get pigeonholed in the security frame is like people think all you care about is Islamophobia, or all you care about is like, you know, security-related issues. But really, Muslims also care about public education. They're also concerned about the cost of housing. They're also concerned about, relations with law enforcement.
What are your issues? Because like the Mexicans become the face of immigration, and that's your issue. Muslims become the face of Islamophobia or terror or something. But what are the issues in the community that people are coming to you with at the League? Association.
So unfortunately, we have a lot of hate crimes that people come to us for, and a lot of harassment by law enforcement, whether it be FBI or the NYPD. So unfortunately, this is what we've been dealing with. But our women that we serve, they really want to focus on their kids, and for example, access to language, and how can they be involved in the school, and how can they have proper interpretation and translation in the school. This is what they want to do. But then this hope is overthrown by the ghost of FBI and surveillance and NYPD harassment. And so I wish we can work on what they want, but there's an emergency. There's a state of emergency.
Sucking up the air in the room.
Exactly, yeah. And it's enough for I mean, I'm Muslim, and it's like microaggression. I wake up and sleep with this fear and paranoia. There's no longer trust. I mean, there is trust, but there's always this doubt. Who's the informant among us? Because recently we heard how there are many informants in the community. Every constitutional law, so I do Know Your Right workshops in Bay Ridge. And when I do Know Your Right workshops, I tell them all the rights. But somehow I feel like I'm not telling them the truth, because as a Muslim, you are not part, you do not,
necessarily get protected
exactly,
by those rights.
So we are the exception to the rule, and it's really hard to work with that, because how can you tell them, you have these constitutional rights, but the government kind of justifies it by your religion.
Right, which makes it even that much harder to come together when there's kind of mistrust within the community itself. So we said, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. We said this quote earlier on when we were introducing you guys, and it's, no politicians seek any open support from the Muslim community because they fear attacks from right-wing blogs and pundits and talk shows. Is that really just the right wing? Like, do you feel like it's different for high-profile Democrats?
I would say rarely, yeah. I mean, there are some Democrats out there who do actively seek support from Muslim communities. But yeah, I would say they're also the exception. Typically, it's not just right-wing blogs and right-wing media, but you see this also on what would be considered liberal or democratic individuals as well.
So the Muslim community has some very specific challenges as we sit here in 2016, but every sort of immigrant wave has this cycle that you go through when you come in, you establish, you work hard, the kids do better. I wonder, just from your perspective, where are you guys as a community on that continuum? Like, elections are coming up. Are there going to be any candidates who speak to those issues who, God forbid, are even Islamic themselves? Is there going to be a candidate that's going to emerge? Are we at the point where we're seeking office, or are we just getting established? There's 1 million folks almost in the city. Got to get at least one in office somewhere. Is Bay Ridge ready for their Muslim leader?
Maybe. But the thing is, right, we're forgetting that New York specifically has Muslims since hundreds of years ago.
Absolutely.
So it's no longer an immigration issue.
Okay.
So it's really an Islamophobic issue that we need to overcome to be able to work with the other things that have been a problem. But I don't know. I mean, there's, again, we are so occupied by these burdens that it seems like it's not time yet to think of that. It's a privilege to think of that.
Come on, Mohammad, you're not ready to announce you're going in. There's
Maybe we can convince him.
But I mean, like Mirna said, like, we're so caught up doing this triage of, like, protecting our communities from Islamophobia that we don't have time to tackle, like, all the other issues that people do care about.
Right. But ironically, it would help to have an elected official on your side.
On the same speed, there is no box where you check what your religion is when you're applying to be a candidate. But famously, we know it all comes down. Some people, that's the most interesting thing about them, is what they share about their religious views. But Mitt Romney got trounced, and he, like, sort of didn't bring his Mormonism to the front. John Kennedy almost didn't make it to the presidency, and we're looking at Bernie Sanders, who some people claim isn't being as Jewish as he should be. So when do you think we'll have a leader who is Muslim? Project a year. from New York City when we can put someone in the office that looks like Brooklyn?
She probably will kill me for saying this. I'm hoping our executive director would be one day the political leader that we need in the community.
She's been here once or
I know.
twice.
She's very upset with you.
I
She's already
personally
called
would
in.
love for her to be that leader.
But what do you think that a Muslim leader would have to show to gain that trust of the masses that, by some accounts, John Kennedy had to do and Bernie Sanders is having to right now? What do you think that bridge is that they have to cross?
Right.
I think it's just, being able to genuinely speak to the issues, right? Like, people like Bernie Sanders not because he's Jewish or because he's, because he's not, because of his religion, but they like him because he speaks genuinely to the issues that people care about. So I think it'd be the same thing for a Muslim candidate, just being able to speak to issues that everyone cares about.
Right. It's like we heard in Hamtramck, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We're not concerned with
gotta
who's
fix
here.
the
We just got to
potholes.
fix the potholes.
Yeah.
That's what we're here to do as elected officials.
So build some coalitions right now before you get out of here. Share your contact info, how folks can get in touch.
So you can find us on Facebook, the Arab American Association of New York, and on Twitter. So please follow us and send us a message if you'd like to come volunteer or participate with our work.
Great. You can find us at www.empowerchange.org. We're also on Facebook as Empower Change. And you can find us on Twitter at empower_change.
Phenomenal. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for
Thanks so
having
much
us.
for joining us.
Thank you.
Bump, bump.